The distant stars provided a serene backdrop as the USS Voyager navigated its way through the cold vacuum of space. The serenity, however, was short-lived, as a massive Borg fleet emerged from the depths of the cosmos, their ominous presence casting a shadow of terror over the crew of Voyager. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple Borg vessels approaching our position," Lieutenant Harry Kim announced, his voice tense. Captain Catherine Janeway, a woman of steel and unyielding determination, took a deep breath and issued her commands. "Red alert! All hands to battle stations. Raise shields and prepare to engage." "Aye, Captain," replied her first officer, Commander Chakotay, as he relayed her orders to the rest of the crew. The Borg fleet closed in, their vessels' angular forms and greenish glow a stark contrast to Voyager's sleek, curved hull. The two forces collided in a cacophony of energy beams and torpedoes, each volley tearing into the hulls of the opposing ships. As the battle raged on, Voyager's chief engineer, Lieutenant Belana Torres, frantically tried to keep the ship's systems from failing. "Captain, our shields are down to 40%. We can't take much more of this." Janeway knew that the situation was growing desperate. She furrowed her brow and clenched her fists, a pained expression on her face. "Tuvok, have you had any luck adapting our weapons to penetrate the Borg's adaptive shielding?" "I'm afraid not, Captain," the Vulcan tactical officer replied, his voice remaining calm and collected despite the chaos around him. "They have already adapted to our phasers and photon torpedoes." Sensing the hopelessness of the situation, Janeway made a bold decision. "Helm, prepare to initiate an emergency warp jump. We need to get out of here and regroup." "Aye, Captain," acknowledged the helmsman, Lieutenant Tom Paris, his fingers flying over the console as he input the commands. The crew braced themselves as the ship leaped into warp, leaving behind the deadly battlefield and the relentless Borg fleet. "Report!" Janeway ordered, her voice strained. "We've sustained heavy damage to our warp nacelles, hull, and several key systems," Chakotay informed her, his eyes scanning the various readouts on his console. "We've also lost several crew members." Janeway closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of her responsibility. "We can't outrun the Borg forever. We need a plan." At that moment, the ship's astrometrics officer, 7 of 9, chimed in. "Captain, I am detecting a nearby nebula that may help us evade the Borg. We can use it as a temporary hiding place while we assess the damage and formulate a strategy." Janeway nodded. "Very well. Set a course for the nebula and let's hope we can buy ourselves some time." The USS Voyager, battered and bruised, limped into the safety of the nebula. Its gaseous cloud swirled around the ship, obscuring it from the Borg's sensors. Inside, the crew worked tirelessly to assess the damage and tend to the wounded. Captain Janeway stood in the center of the bridge, her hands gripping the back of her chair as she surveyed the various reports coming in. "Status, Commander Chakotay?" "Shields are at 20%, Captain. We've managed to restore limited warp capability, but it won't be enough to outrun the Borg for long," Chakotay reported, his face grim. Janeway nodded, her expression determined. "We need an edge, something that can tip the balance in our favor. 7, have you found anything of interest in the nebula?" 7 of 9 studied her console, her Borg-enhanced senses taking in the data at an astounding rate. "I have detected unusual energy readings emanating from a nearby asteroid field. The source of these readings is unknown, but they could be worth investigating." Intrigued, Janeway considered the possibilities. "Very well. Assemble a reconnaissance team, take Lieutenants Paris and Torres with you, and find out what's causing those readings." "Aye, Captain," 7 acknowledged, before heading to the turbolift with Tom Paris and Belana Torres. As the reconnaissance team departed, Janeway turned to her Chief of Security, Tuvok. "Tuvok, I want you to oversee repairs and defenses while we're in the nebula. We can't afford to let our guard down." "Understood, Captain," Tuvok replied, already focused on the task at hand. Deep within the asteroid field, the reconnaissance team piloted a shuttle through the dense cluster of space rocks. The asteroid field seemed to go on forever, a seemingly endless expanse of tumbling stones and debris. "What do you think is out here, 7? Paris asked, trying to maintain a light-hearted demeanor despite the gravity of their situation. "It is impossible to say with certainty, Lieutenant," 7 replied, her voice measured and cool. "However, The energy readings suggest that whatever is causing them may be of significant technological interest. As the shuttle wove its way through the asteroids, Torres frowned at her own console. "I don't like this, Tom. It feels like we're being led into a trap." Paris glanced over at her, his eyes filled with concern. "I know what you mean, B'Elanna, but we don't have much of a choice. We need any advantage we can get against the Borg." After navigating through the treacherous asteroid field, the team finally came upon a site that none of them had expected, an ancient abandoned research station nestled among the rocks. The station appeared to have been built by a long-lost civilization, its weathered exterior hinting at the passage of time. "Let's get in there and find out what's causing those energy readings," Janeway's voice commanded over their comm system. "Be careful and report back as soon as you have any information." The reconnaissance team nodded, their faces set with determination as they prepared to explore the mysterious station and uncover the source of the unusual energy readings. The reconnaissance team stepped cautiously into the abandoned research station, their flashlights casting eerie shadows across the long, neglected corridors. As they delved deeper, they discovered a treasure trove of relics and artifacts from the long-lost civilization. "This place is incredible," Torres whispered, her eyes wide with wonder as she examined a dusty artifact. "These people must have been incredibly advanced." 7 of 9 nodded in agreement, her curiosity piqued by the strange technology that surrounded them. "Indeed, it is possible that we may find something here that could aid us in our fight against the Borg." As they continued to explore the station, they came across a chamber that appeared to be the focal point of the facility. In its center stood a device unlike anything they had ever seen before. Its sleek design and unfamiliar controls suggested that it was the source of the unusual energy readings they had detected earlier. "What do you think this is?" Paris asked, his voice filled with awe as he approached the device. "It appears to be some sort of particle beam emitter," Seven replied, examining the controls with a critical eye. "But the energy readings we detected suggest that its capabilities far exceed that of any known technology." Intrigued, the team began to work together to decipher the device's controls and functions. With Seven's extensive Borg knowledge and the technical expertise of Paris and Torres, they slowly began to unlock the secrets of the ancient technology. As they made progress, they discovered references to the device in ancient texts and artifacts scattered throughout the station. The long-lost civilization had called it the Positron Pulse, an experimental weapon of immense power that had been lost to the ages. "Could this be our key to defeating the Borg?" Paris asked, hope flickering in his eyes. "It is possible," Seven replied, her voice cautious, "but we must proceed with care. There are likely risks involved in using such a powerful weapon." The team debated the morality of using the Positron Pulse against the Borg. They knew that the weapon could be a game-changer, but they also worried about the potential consequences if the Borg were to obtain it and use it against Voyager or other innocent parties. Despite their reservations, they ultimately decided that the risk was worth taking. With the Positron Pulse in tow, they returned to Voyager, determined to turn the tide of the battle against their relentless pursuers. Back on the Voyager, the crew began the arduous task of installing the Positron Pulse onto the ship's systems. Engineers and technicians from various departments collaborated to move the device using specialized equipment and transporters, ensuring its safe installation. As they worked, they encountered numerous technical challenges, including power fluctuations, compatibility issues with Voyager's existing systems, and unexpected difficulties with the Positron Pulse's controls and interface. Despite these obstacles, the crew persevered, their determination to defeat the Borg driving them forward. "Harry, how are we doing with the interface?" B'Elanna asked, her voice strained from hours of work. "We're making progress, but it's slow," Ensign Kim replied, his fingers flying over the console as he attempted to integrate the ancient technology with Voyager's systems. "This technology is unlike anything we've ever seen before." In another section of the ship, 7 of 9 consulted with Lieutenant Commander Tuvok, who was overseeing the installation's security. "We must ensure that the Borg cannot access the Positron Pulse. The consequences would be dire if they were to obtain this technology." Tuvok nodded in agreement. "I have assigned additional security personnel to guard the device at all times. and we are implementing multiple layers of encryption to prevent unauthorized access. After a grueling 12-hour installation process, the crew finally managed to successfully integrate the Positron Pulse with Voyager's systems and power it up for testing. Exhausted but determined, they gathered on the bridge to witness the weapon's first test. "Are we ready to proceed?" Captain Janeway asked, her gaze sweeping over her weary crew. "Aye, Captain," B'Elanna replied, her voice filled with a mix of exhaustion and anticipation. "The Positron Pulse is fully integrated and ready for testing." Janeway gave a decisive nod. "Very well. Engage the weapon." As the Positron Pulse hummed to life, the crew watched with bated breath, hoping that the ancient weapon would prove to be the key to their survival. With the testing complete, they began to prepare for the coming battle, knowing that the fate of the ship and the entire galaxy rested on their success. Voyager left the nebula, its course set for the location of the Borg fleet. The crew steeled themselves for the fight ahead, determined to catch their enemies off guard and use the Positron Pulse to devastating effect. The USS Voyager finally caught up to the Borg fleet, and the tension on the bridge was palpable. Captain Janeway stood at her command chair, her eyes focused on the view screen as she issued her orders. "Prepare the Positron Pulse for firing. This is our one shot to turn the tide." "Aye, Captain," B'Elanna replied, her fingers flying over her console as she activated the weapon. The crew held their breath as the Positron Pulse charged up, the ship's systems straining under the immense power being drawn from them. Sparks flew and lights flickered throughout Voyager, but the crew remained steadfast in their determination. "Positron Pulse is ready, Captain," 7 of 9 announced, her voice steady despite the pressure. Janeway took a deep breath and gave the order. "Fire!" The Positron Pulse unleashed a torrent of antimatter particles that tore through the heart of the Borg fleet, causing a massive explosion. However, the shockwave from the blast also damaged Voyager's systems, leaving them vulnerable to further attacks. "The weapon is offline," Harry Kim reported, his voice tense. "We're working on bringing it back online, but it's going to take some time." As the crew scrambled to repair the Positron Pulse, the Borg returned fire with their own weapons, pummeling Voyager with a barrage of energy pulses. The ship shook violently as Janeway ordered power diverted to the shields. "Shields are holding, but they're depleting rapidly," Tuvok informed the captain, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. "We have only 10% remaining." The crew knew they had to act quickly. Time was running out, and they needed to repair the Positron Pulse and fire it again before the shields failed and Voyager was destroyed. The crew of Voyager worked tirelessly to repair the Positron Pulse, the pressure mounting with each passing moment as the Borg continued their relentless assault. Phaser fire and torpedo blasts streaked through space as Voyager fought back, doing everything in their power to hold off the enemy. "How much longer until the Positron Pulse is back online?" Captain Janeway asked, her voice tense as she gripped the armrests of her command chair. "We're close, Captain, but we need more time," B'Elanna replied, her voice strained with effort. Suddenly, a powerful blast from a Borg ship slammed into Voyager, causing the ship to shudder violently. Alarms blared as the damage report came in. "Direct hit to the engines," Harry reported, his voice filled with worry. "They're failing, Captain." With the ship drifting helplessly in space and the Borg closing in for the kill, the crew knew they had no choice but to make a last stand. "Divert all remaining power to the Positron Pulse," Janeway ordered, her voice filled with determination. "We have to make this count." As the weapon charged up once more, the crew braced themselves for the final confrontation. Janeway gave the order to fire, and the Positron Pulse unleashed another massive burst of energy that tore through the remaining Borg ships. The shockwave from the blast sent Voyager hurtling through space, barely holding together. In the aftermath of the battle, the crew allowed themselves a moment of celebration. They had won the day, but at a great cost. Voyager was heavily damaged, and many crew members were injured or worse. As they assessed the damage and began the long process of repairing the ship, they knew their journey home was far from over. But with the indomitable spirit that had carried them this far, they would continue to face the challenges of the Delta Quadrant, united in their determination to return home to Earth.